whose thought just flickered through your mind. We are accustomed to perceiving this inner monologue as an inseparable part of ourselves, an absolute constant of our existence, the very foundation of our individuality. But what if this voice is merely a meticulously crafted compilation of borrowed ideas, imposed fears, and artificially implanted desires that you mistakenly embrace as your own identity? Neurobiology has long teetered on the brink of a chilling discovery, one that shatters the anthropocentric myth of free will. What we proudly label conscious choice is, in the vast majority of cases, merely post-facto rationalization. Your brain makes decisions milliseconds, sometimes even seconds, before your consciousness ever registers the fact. You don't make decisions in real time. You merely receive a neurochemical dispatch announcing that a choice has already been made, accompanied by the comforting illusion of your own authorship. The illusion of self. It is perhaps evolution's most sophisticated defense mechanism. It is designed to shield our psyche from the existential terror of recognizing our own automated nature. Are we not simply complex biological algorithms, blindly executing code written by our environment? Every political stance you hold, every aesthetic taste, every emotional response to a stimulus has its unseen architect. We operate in a world where human attention has become the most coveted and precious resource, and consciousness itself has transformed into a battlefield of ceaseless, silent warfare. If you genuinely believe your convictions are exclusively your own, try to trace the genesis of even one. You will inevitably discover thin threads leading back to a masterfully phrased headline, a casually overheard remark, or a meticulously planned information campaign that seamlessly integrated itself into your worldview, took root, and mimicked your own thought. Consider the most mundane of everyday scenarios. You walk into a coffee shop, glance at the menu, and order a drink. You are absolutely convinced this is your free choice, dictated by your unique taste and current mood. But have you ever considered precisely how that mood was constructed? The music, with its precisely calibrated 60 beats per minute, imperceptibly slows your movements, compelling you to linger longer on the display case. Warm, focused lighting above the most expensive desserts renders them visually irresistible, stimulating salivation at a basic physiological level. The scent of vanilla, artificially synthesized and dispersed through a hidden ventilation system, instantly activates your limbic system, conjuring a false sense of nostalgia, security, and comfort. Even the order of items on the menu is meticulously engineered according to stringent principles of cognitive distortion. The anchoring effect, positioning the most expensive item first, compels you to compare all subsequent prices in a way that benefits the establishment, fabricating the illusion of a good deal. Your brain obediently processes these invisible stimuli, releases dopamine, and you utter the name of your drink. You believe you wanted that coffee. In reality, you were artfully guided to a point where any other choice became psychologically uncomfortable. The same insidious process, on a vastly grander scale, unfolds every second of your interaction with the digital realm. Every flick of your finger across the screen, every micropause of your gaze on a photograph, is recorded, analyzed, and weaponized against your very autonomy. Algorithms have long since outgrown the stage of merely predicting our behavior. Now, they actively construct it. By shaping your personalized information bubble, unseen mathematical models dictate what you will fear tomorrow, at whom you will direct your wrath, and what you will accept as undeniable truth. This is a perfected architecture of choice, where the walls are utterly transparent, yet crossing their bounds is impossible simply because you remain oblivious to their very existence. Does this not echo the plight of a prisoner so profoundly integrated into their system of incarceration that they come to perceive the prison walls as the very boundaries of the universe? Our consciousness is merely a simplified user interface. Its primary function is to conceal the incredibly complex, often terrifying computational processes ceaselessly churning in the darkness of the subconscious. When we confidently declare, I want, I believe, I have decided, we are merely vocalizing the final outcome of an equation whose variables were predetermined by someone or something else. Shattering this illusion is painful, for it demands acknowledging our own fundamental vulnerability to the colossal machinery of social and technological programming. Yet, only by radically questioning the sovereignty of our own thoughts can we take the first, most arduous step toward a genuine understanding of the nature of our minds. If we are not the authors of our desires, then who or what truly holds the pen that scripts the narrative of our lives? The answer to that question lies hidden within the very mechanisms that, even now, at this precise moment, are scanning, analyzing, and subtly reformatting your reality. We have grown accustomed to believing our own consciousness is sovereign territory, an impregnable fortress where our true desires, lofty ideals, and moral imperatives are born. Yet, scientific reality offers a far grimmer scenario for our existence. What we proudly call ourselves is merely an interface, a thin veneer of illusion, beneath which a ruthless biochemical dictate rages. Are we not just biological suits, piloted by entities that evolved billions of years before the first hominid appeared? Descend to the level of the gastrointestinal tract, into the darkness of human viscera. There dwells a trillion-strong army of microorganisms whose combined weight surpasses that of our brain. These are no passive symbionts, but the shadow government of our physiology. The microbiome possesses its own genome, hundreds of times larger than the human one, and this colossal genetic power is ceaselessly employed for the synthesis of neurotransmitters. Over 90% of serotonin, the molecule responsible for our feelings of happiness, social significance, and calm, is produced by bacteria in the gut, not by neurons in the head. Approximately half of dopamine, our primary motivator and the source of our anticipation of reward, shares the same origin. When an insatiable craving for a specific food arises, is it truly your personal gastronomic choice? Experimental data indicates that certain strains of bacteria, which feed on sugars or fats, are capable of sending direct signals via the vagus nerve straight to the brain. This nerve acts as a high-speed information superhighway, yet the traffic upon it is predominantly unidirectional, from the gut to the skull. Bacteria alter the activity of taste receptors, provoke dysphoria, and literally compel their host to consume what is necessary for their own propagation. We perceive this as a personal urge, never suspecting that we are merely executing a command encrypted within chemical impulses. Our mood, anxiety levels, capacity for concentration, and even susceptibility to severe depression, all are inextricably correlated with the composition of our microflora. The eradication of certain bacteria can transform a confident individual into a paranoid shell. But the microbiome is only half of the equation in this architecture of subjugation. The other part of the control machine is the endocrine system. Hormones act as global reality modifiers, capable of rewriting our moral coordinates in real time. Oxytocin is often romanticized as the molecule of love and attachment. Yet, neurobiology reveals its darker, evolutionary side. This neuropeptide does indeed enhance empathy and trust, but exclusively towards members of our group. Simultaneously, It sharply increases levels of aggression, suspicion, and xenophobia towards outsiders. Can we even speak of objective ethics if our decisions concerning mercy or cruelty hinge upon the current concentration of a few amino acids in the hypothalamus? Consider the impact of cortisol and testosterone on the prefrontal cortex, the very region of the brain responsible for rational control, long-term planning, and the restraint of primal impulses. During moments of intense hormonal surges, the connection between the amygdala, the generator of primal emotions, and the rational centers physically weakens. Chronic stress literally reconfigures neural networks, forcing the brain to prioritize immediate survival over complex moral dilemmas. A complex, multifaceted personality is instantly reduced to the base instincts of dominance or flight. Forensic psychiatrists have long known that a critical imbalance of certain hormones statistically correlates with a higher propensity for violence. Justice judges the individual, even though the act of aggression is often initiated by their temporarily fractured biochemistry. Where then does chemistry end and true personality begin? If our sympathies are shaped by microbes, aggression dictated by hormones, and the capacity for compassion rigidly regulated by neuropeptides, what remains for free will? Witnessing this ceaseless dance of molecules, it's impossible to escape the thought of a total loss of biological control. We are a complex ecosystem, a battlefield where billions of microorganisms and chemical compounds vie for the right to press the correct button in our nervous system. Every step, every infatuation, every surge of anger or act of self-sacrifice is meticulously calculated and triggered by processes that can neither be felt nor consciously halted. The illusion of absolute control is maintained by the brain solely to ensure the organism continues to function, preventing it from spiraling into stupor at the realization of its own mechanistic nature. Behind the locked doors of our consciousness, there is no supreme commander. There is only the dark, pulsating ocean of the microbiome and blind hormonal storms, ruthlessly dashing our minds against the cliffs of biological inevitability. Does it not now seem that our lives are merely the viewing of a film, its script penned by bacteria and glands, while we naively persist in believing ourselves the directors? Hundreds of times a day, we touch the smooth glass of our screens, naively believing we control the flow of information and keep our finger on the pulse of the world. Yet, beyond that display, a different game unfolds entirely, its rules etched in the language of machine learning, its stakes measured in human destinies. Every swipe, every millisecond our gaze lingers on a photograph, every like, these are not mere casual actions. They are invaluable drops of data, feeding the colossal architecture of digital control. Are we not witnessing how an innocent tool of communication has evolved into history's most sophisticated mechanism of social engineering? Modern platforms long ceased being mere showcases for news or photos. They have transformed into invisible global laboratories where the very object of relentless, merciless experimentation is human consciousness itself. In this asymmetric interaction, on one side lies the human brain with its evolutionary vulnerabilities, and on the other, supercomputers toiling ceaselessly solely to exploit those weaknesses. At the core of this grand architecture lies a profound, almost surgical understanding of our neurobiology. Evolution taught humanity to seek new information for survival, rewarding each successful search with a microdose of dopamine, the neurotransmitter of motivation and pleasure. Technological giants have cracked this ancient biological code, twisting natural curiosity into an endless dopamine loop. The mechanics of the endless news feed are deliberately copied from slot machines, based on the principle of unpredictable reward. We never truly know what the next swipe will yield. A humorous video, a disquieting news item that quickens the pulse, or social validation in the form of a comment. This artificially engineered uncertainty keeps the nervous system in a state of constant, debilitating anticipation, compelling us to return to the screen again and again, even when our eyes ache and our minds plead for rest. Our attention, our capacity for concentration, and even our ability to simply be bored have been transmuted into the era's most valuable resource. Raw material extracted from our psyche without our conscious consent, leaving behind only cognitive exhaustion. But holding attention is merely the first, foundational stage of this machine's operation. The true, profound transformation occurs when algorithms begin to sculpt a personalized, hermetic reality around us. By analyzing our hidden fears, political preferences, and psychological traumas, artificial intelligence crafts the perfect informational bubble for each user. This is a specific space where every news item, every post, and every recommendation merely reinforces our pre-existing beliefs. Initially, this conjures a pleasant illusion of comfort and security, as the world appears logical and everyone around us seems to share our views. Yet, do we not become captives of our own reflection, imprisoned in a room of distorted mirrors? Within this warm digital isolation, critical thinking atrophies from disuse. The algorithm excises alternative viewpoints not due to some ideological censorship, but through cold, mathematical optimization for engagement. The machine rapidly learns that anger, radicalization, and outrage retain users far more effectively than calm, measured analysis. Thus, society is silently fractured into millions of isolated realities, which no longer share a common foundation of objective truth, losing the very capacity for dialogue. The most chilling aspect of this system lies in its capacity not merely to predict our behavior, but to subtly modify it at a fundamental level. As we consume content meticulously selected and weighed by the machine for years, our moral compass, our notions of normalcy, and our life goals undergo a slow, irreversible corrosion. This is not the crude propaganda of the last century, which provoked natural resistance through its obviousness and obtrusiveness. These are microscopic, daily shifts in perception. The algorithm knows precisely at what time of day we are most vulnerable to emotional manipulation, which visual triggers compel us to feel inadequacy, and which words incite the desire to buy or to hate. Reducing the entire complexity and multifaceted nature of the real world to primitive binary reactions, the system programs human worldview with the same methodical precision as an engineer codes a robot. Can we, after this, confidently assert that the thoughts emerging in our minds before sleep truly belong to us, and are not the predictable outcome of prolonged algorithmic processing of our consciousness? We find ourselves ensnared in an unprecedented historical trap, where the highest level of technological development is accompanied by a catastrophic loss of cognitive autonomy. The networks, once conceived with the utopian aim of uniting humanity, have erected the highest invisible walls between us, using the very architecture of our own brains as the building material for these barriers. Within this coordinate system, every human emotion is ruthlessly monetized, every psychological weakness meticulously cataloged for future exploitation. Instead of broadening the horizons of our knowledge, the digital ecosystem constricts them to the dimensions of a smartphone screen, offering a vibrant, yet hollow surrogate for life instead of genuine experience. In this quiet cybernetic gloom, where soulless algorithms dictate the rhythm of our informational breath, the most terrifying question of our age arises. Does humanity remain a free agent of its own destiny when its reality is rewritten every second by cold code, whose sole purpose is the maximization of profit through total, absolute control over where our gaze falls? The illusion of one's own uniqueness is the most sophisticated defense mechanism the human psyche has ever devised. We are born with an utterly blank slate of perception, yet within the first seconds of life, invisible architects of society begin uploading the foundational software. What is commonly known as cultural code is, in truth, a rigid set of algorithms that define the boundaries of our world. From the first lullabies, from the earliest tales of right and wrong, of heroes and outcasts, an invisible yet exceptionally robust cage is constructed around our consciousness. The language we learn to think in already carries within it the hidden hierarchies and biases of generations past. We can barely walk, yet society is already embedding into our neural network the coordinates of what will be deemed success and what a fatal failure. Are our deepest convictions merely echoes of foreign voices, heard so frequently in childhood that, over time, we began to mistake them for our own inner monologue? Let us dissect the anatomy of our dreams. The yearning for prestige, career triumph, the idealized family from a billboard, or status consumption. Are these truly organic needs of human nature? The social programming industry operates flawlessly, for it doesn't compel action through threat of physical violence. Its highest art lies in making the subject fervently desire what benefits the system. The dream of success is meticulously engineered in the laboratories of mass culture, filigreed into cinema, literature, and the endless feeds of social media. We squander decades of our lives, depleting our own biological resources, chasing phantoms carefully placed on our horizon by someone else. Modern propaganda has long transcended the crude realm of political slogans. Today, it is a subtle, pervasive social hypnosis dissolved into the very air we breathe. It dictates not only whom to vote for, but what to deem beautiful, whom to despise, what to laugh at, and for what to sacrifice ourselves. This hypnosis operates through the continuous repetition of patterns that skillfully bypass the barriers of critical thinking and embed directly into the subconscious. Neurobiology has long proven that our brains reward us with dopamine for social approval. The system knows this access code and exploits it, rendering us addicted to external validation. But the architecture of control doesn't solely rest on artificial stimuli and imposed desires. Its most robust foundation is the engineering of fear. Our most potent phobias often bear no relation to the natural instinct for self-preservation. The dread of failing to meet established standards, the nocturnal terror of public condemnation, the panic-stricken fear of social isolation. These are artificially cultivated viruses of the mind. Society marks the boundaries of the permissible with invisible electric fences. Take but a single step away from the accepted narrative, and the mechanism of social ostracism is instantly triggered. As social creatures, we are biologically programmed to dread expulsion from the pack, and this fear paralyzes the will far more effectively than any real shackles. Every day, we make thousands of decisions, genuinely believing in the freedom of our own will. From trivial daily habits to global life strategies, we imagine ourselves at the helm. Yet, every available option is pre-filtered by an invisible censorship. We are merely offered the illusion of choice within a strictly approved menu. Even any rebellion against the system is, more often than not, just another pre-programmed form of behavior that society skillfully monetizes and absorbs, transforming protest into merely another fleeting trend. To peer behind the curtain of one's own consciousness is to risk beholding a void where we expected to find ourself. What percentage of our personality genuinely belongs to us? Through whose eyes do we truly observe this world when we pass judgment? When we feel triumph or plummet into depression due to unmet expectations? Whose emotions are these truly? Our own, or the expertly orchestrated reactions of a perfectly calibrated mechanism, flawlessly functioning within the matrix of social hypnosis? The answer to this question is capable of shattering the reality of any individual who dares to seek it to its very end. You feel an absolute certainty that you chose to read or hear these words. This sense of self-agency seems so unshakable that any doubt instantly triggers an instinctive resistance. You raise your hand, take a step, choose coffee over tea, and believe that each of these acts is the result of your conscious, sovereign will. Yet, science ruthlessly dissects this comforting illusion, leaving us face to face with modern neurobiology's most terrifying revelation. Consciousness decides nothing. Let us return to the classic experiments of Benjamin Libet, which first punched a hole in the wall of our self-assurance. Using electroencephalography, the so-called readiness potential was recorded, a specific brain activity emerging hundreds of milliseconds before a person even becomes aware of their desire to make a movement. Fractions of a second might seem insignificant, but this was merely the beginning. Modern functional magnetic resonance imaging technologies have since transformed this scientific anomaly into a true existential horror. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute pushed this boundary significantly further. They instructed subjects to press one of two buttons, observing their brain activity in real time. The results proved devastating for the concept of free will. The scanner registered neural activity patterns that unmistakably predicted which button a person would choose, a staggering 7 to 10 seconds before they even became conscious of their own decision. 10 seconds in the scale of neurobiology isn't just a delay, it's an eternity. While you hesitate, weigh arguments, and genuinely believe you're undertaking a complex analytical process, your brain has already made its decision. Beneath the smooth surface of our consciousness hides a chaotic torrent of data, a primal biological code that could be imagined as a nonsensical string of symbols. Caret plus zo. This neural noise, this dark melange of electrical discharges and biochemical reactions within the basal ganglia and prefrontal cortex, is the true architect of our actions. Consciousness, in this system, plays no role as CEO. It functions more like a public relations department, whose sole task is to retrospectively invent a rational and socially acceptable justification for a decision already made in the profound darkness of the skull. Are we not merely hostages to this intricate biological machine? Every act of heroism, every surge of hatred, every falling in love or betrayal, all are nothing more than a predetermined cascade of sodium and potassium ions traversing cellular membranes. Our actions are dictated by the genetic lottery, the level of hormones in our blood, the architecture of neural networks forged by childhood traumas, and even what we consume for breakfast. In this unending chain of causes and effects, there is simply no room left for an independent, disembodied I that could intervene and alter the course of events. The realization of this fact is paralyzing. If all our choices are merely the mathematically inevitable outcome of prior states of matter, then the very boundary between good and evil, between guilt and merit is erased. Justice, morality, social institutions, all are predicated on the chilling assumption that a person could have acted differently. But neurobiology asserts they could not. At the moment a crime was committed or a masterpiece created, the configuration of synapses and the chemical balance of the brain rendered any other scenario physically impossible. We are accustomed to seeing ourselves as the drivers on the journey of our own lives. But objective reality indicates we are merely passengers, locked in the back seat of an autonomous vehicle. We're left only to gaze out the window, watching as our body reacts to stimuli, clinging to the illusion that we hold the steering wheel. This is the deepest form of alienation, to become a helpless spectator in the cinema of our own mind, where the film has already been shot and the ending determined long before the lights ever dimmed in the theater. The darkness within the cranial vault conceals the most complex mechanism in the known universe. Billions of neurons weave a web of decisions every second, decisions we naively believe are our own. Are we not merely passengers in a vessel whose course is charted by evolution, ancient traumas, and chemical reactions? The illusion of control is the most sophisticated defense mechanism of our psyche. We rationalize bursts of anger, sudden desires, or inexplicable fear with intricate philosophical concepts, though the true cause often lurks in a mundane fluctuation of cortisol or dopamine levels. Our consciousness resembles a flashlight beam, snatching from the darkness only those fragments of reality that the brain has already selected, processed, and prepared for consumption. Can we truly claim authorship of our own lives if every step we take is dictated by the architecture of neural networks, forged without our consent? Imagine this primal code of our psyche as a chaotic set of symbols, an incomprehensible static, something akin to a corrupted signal constantly pulsating in the background. This subconscious white noise dictates behavioral patterns, forcing us to endlessly retrace the same erroneous circles. We react to triggers before the neocortex can even process the information. The amygdala already sounds the alarm, dumping a cocktail of stress hormones into the bloodstream, while we only belatedly concoct rationalizations for our panic or aggression. Does this not resemble life in an invisible prison, its bars forged from our very own synapses? Yet, within this cold, merciless truth lies the seed of genuine liberation. Acknowledging our biological predetermination is not defeat. It is catharsis. It is the moment the stage props fall away and we finally behold the true cables and gears that operate the spectacle. Embracing our animalistic, algorithmic nature bestows incredible power, for one cannot reprogram a system whose laws one fails to comprehend. He who denies his own instincts is doomed to remain their blind instrument. Conversely, he who stares into the eyes of his internal machine gains a chance to touch the control panel. The path to liberation lies through awareness, but not the kind peddled by popular esoteric practices. This is awareness as a cognitive scalpel, a merciless analytical instrument. It is the ability to dissect one's own reactions into atoms in real time. Between the stimulus that strikes the nervous system and our reaction to it, there exists a microscopic gap, a fraction of a second. Within this minuscule rift in space-time hides our freedom. The task is not to obliterate emotions or erase basic instincts. That is physiologically impossible. The task is to expand this gap, transforming it into a territory of conscious choice. Every automatic thought that streaks through the mind must be treated as a hypothesis, not as an absolute truth. Is this threat truly real, or merely an echo of an ancient survival mechanism triggered by a false signal? Is this immediate dopamine surge truly necessary, or merely a cunning trap set by an environment that has cracked the code of our reward system? To question one's own reactions is the most arduous intellectual labor a human is capable of. It is an act of internal rebellion against the dictatorship of one's own brain. Neuroplasticity is our tool for hacking the system. The brain is capable of altering its structure under the influence of focused attention. Each time an automatic reaction is consciously inhibited, a new neural pathway is forged. Initially, it's akin to hacking a path through impenetrable jungle, demanding colossal expenditures of energy. The nervous system will resist, conjuring rationalizations, provoking emotional breakdowns, attempting to lure us back to the comfortable, wide highways of old habits. Critical thinking must not be aimed solely at the external world, information streams, or societal dogmas. Its primary, most vulnerable target is ourselves. Our biases, our cognitive distortions, our cherished illusions. Reclaiming the helm begins with the willingness to admit that, for most of the time, control resides in the hands of a blind autopilot. When one begins to meticulously track how anger forms, how anxiety is born, how desire is constructed, a fundamental shift occurs. The position of a passive observer, hooked up to a life support machine, vanishes. The position of an operator emerges. This process will never be easy or comfortable. It demands the cold detachment of a researcher studying a dangerous virus in a laboratory of their own consciousness. But this is the sole price worth paying for the right to call oneself the architect of one's own destiny. Observe, analyze, distrust the first impulse. Only thus, step by painstaking step, millimeter by millimeter, can control be wrested from the grip of evolutionary inertia. Only thus can one become something more than a mere collection of chemical reactions in the darkness